So, Mitch McConnell is up for re-election this year, and I cannot stress how important it is that we oust Mitch McConnell. This is serious, because for all of the criticisms that I have of Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell is arguably worse than Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is basically just a mouthpiece for all of the fascistic policies that we're seeing. But Mitch McConnell is the enforcer. Without Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump wouldn't be nearly as effective as he is now. Mitch McConnell is the reason why Donald Trump is able to stack the federal judiciary. It's because he has Mitch McConnell doing his bidding for him. And up until recently, Mitch McConnell was actually the least popular senator in the United States of America. But Susan Collins did pass him. But nonetheless, he is a very disliked individual. So the question is, if he's so unliked, if he's so destructive, why does he keep getting elected? Now, I think that Republicans like him because strategically, Mitch McConnell is very savvy. He's effective. He gets things done. He gets their far-right extremist agenda implemented. He makes it a reality. That's why they like him. So why is it that Democrats can't find someone who's competent enough to oust Mitch McConnell, given the threat that he poses? Well, let's go back to 2014, which is the last time when Mitch McConnell was up for re-election. His challenger was a woman named Allison Lundergan Grimes, who thought that she'd be able to beat Mitch McConnell by out-Republicaning him. And she wouldn't even admit that she voted for Barack Obama because apparently she didn't want to lose any credibility among conservatives that she thought that she built up. So, she lost. It was a huge defeat, and it wasn't really that surprising. Now, fast forward to today, and Democrats are opting for someone who's even worse, who's effectively running as a pro-Trump Democrat. Yes, you heard that right. A pro-Trump Democrat whose argument to the people of Kentucky is, listen, Mitch McConnell hasn't actually been able to implement Donald Trump's agenda. So all of the good parts of Trump's agenda that he talked about in 2016, Mitch McConnell has been a hurdle to that. So I'm going to get in and actually enable Trump to do all of the good things. Right? Well, you can see that Donald Trump hasn't been wanting to do any of the good things. Think about infrastructure, for example. The only thing that we saw proposed or floated was some type of hyper-privatized version that was endorsed by the Koch brothers of infrastructure rebuilding. So, this argument isn't going to land with Democrats, right? So we need a progressive alternative. Now, earlier this year, I talked to an individual named Stephen Cox who had the right policies, and I think that his criticism of Amy McGrath was sound, but his campaign just never got off the ground. There was no campaign infrastructure, no team, and his Twitter account went dark because his campaign just kind of imploded. So the question is, what now? Stephen Cox is seemingly nowhere to be found, so are we just stuck with Amy McGrath? Well, no, because we actually have not just an alternative to Amy McGrath, but one of the best options that anyone could hope for in terms of a politician running for the United States Senate. His name is Charles Booker, and what we're seeing with this race is something special is happening here. At least in Kentucky, Democrats seem to be waking up because they're unequivocally rejecting the corporate Democrat that the National Party is trying to shove down everyone's throats. And Charles Booker announced that he's received the endorsements from most of the state's Democratic Party. That includes the legislative state Black Caucus, as well as state House leadership and nearly half of the entire Democratic caucus in Kentucky. So you have a progressive stand up and say, I'm going to take on Mitch McConnell, and members of the state Democratic Party in Kentucky are saying, all right, we're not going to opt for Amy McGrath, even though the National Party wants her. We're going to go with Charles Booker. Now, you might think, how progressive is he if all of the establishment figures within Kentucky are lining up behind him? Well, see for yourself. Look at his platform here. It goes further than Bernie's in some respects because he supports Medicare for all, a Green New Deal. He also supports a universal basic income, which is especially important during a pandemic, cannabis legalization, criminal justice reform, basically anything you'd hope for from a progressive. So he decided to step up to give the people of Kentucky a real alternative. This is what is needed. And I just want to give you a taste of who Charles Booker is, because he decided to make his voice heard in Kentucky's House when They were bringing up the issue of abortion, and one person decided to compare it to lynching, literally. This was his response. He kept going even after his mic was cut.
Listen, I stood up, probably for the first time in the state's history, gave a monologue about what it would mean to be shot as a black man. Talked about Senate Bill 150. Talked about lynchings. Told you how my family was lynched. How some want to compare that to abortion. What a roller coaster I've been on this session. I've laid all my stories out for you. I explained to you how these types of laws, like 150, would kill people. And the same folks that want to have the audacity to vote yes now voted for that legislation.
Gentlemen, I apologize.
My life matters too, Speaker.
Your 3 minutes is up.
My life matters too, Speaker.
You are out of order. Your 3 minutes are up.
My life matters too.
That was really powerful, and it's so special and important to watch because it's really rare when you see elected politicians actually care about anything. Like, we've become so accustomed to politicians that are focus group driven, thumb pointing ghouls, and they're just robotic, right? They don't believe in anything. So when you see someone who actually is passionate, who, you can see the passion and desire to affect change on his face, you really have to hang on to those people and cherish them. And I want to play an ad from Charles Booker. I'll actually leave you with this ad because I don't think there's anyone better to take on Mitch McConnell. I'm not saying that Charles Booker would be, a sure bet to defeat Mitch McConnell, but if you want a fighting chance, then how could you not opt for someone like this who can actually craft ads that will elicit a real emotional reaction? Like, this ad actually gave me chills. That's how meaningful the message is that he's putting out there. So I'll leave you with this. Support this campaign if you actually want to get rid of Mitch McConnell. And again, everyone should.
You know the name of the man I'm talking about, but he doesn't know your name. He doesn't see you in the hospital bed or in the checkout line or at the safety drills in your classroom. He doesn't see you at all. How many times are we going to re-elect politicians who don't laugh at our jokes, who don't sing at our churches, or who wouldn't call to show us support when we get laid off or get in a car wreck? He doesn't need hope or faith. He's got money and power. And the more power he's won in Washington, the more we've lost in Kentucky. This millionaire friends mine our land, our labor, without paying a living wage. He denies climate change, and he denies us a future. And this man knows more than anybody how to work the system in Washington. He's the architect, but he's done nothing for Kentucky. Because he's not your neighbor. He's not your brother. He ain't even from here. So I grew up in the west end of Louisville. I live in 40203, the poorest zip code in the state. And growing up, I remember so often my mom would go without eating dinner just to save food for me. But I still went to school hungry and tired sometimes. I lived that. And I knew it didn't have to be that way. So I had faith that things could get better. I had faith because I saw my grandparents opening up their homes to foster care. I saw my neighbors fighting back on the picket line, and I saw my uncle become an advocate after my cousin was murdered. Teachers, students, union leaders, we're all believers. And my mom always told me that if you have faith just the size of a mustard seed, you can speak to a mountain, and that mountain has to move. I'm not the alternative to Mitch McConnell. We are. This isn't the type of deal where someone can just run for office or someone can just ask for your vote. Nah, I'm asking for that kind of perseverance you only find in Kentucky. I'm asking us to build that kind of community you only find in Kentucky. Kentucky needs a movement, and we need to start talking about our dreams again. We need a Green New Deal to create thousands of good jobs right here in the Commonwealth to help us do what we do best, take care of one another. We can guarantee new jobs for teachers and nurses, build new hospitals and schools, and we can win Medicare for all so that nobody has to die because they don't have money in their pocket. We can win real democracy in Washington and the workplace. And when we win, we show that something new is happening in Kentucky. Because we're not a joke. We're not a tragedy. I know Kentucky is the future, and America should follow our lead.